They sit quietly on supermarket shelves, lined up in perfect rows, canned goods we've trusted for decades. But according to Elon Musk's recent revelation, some of these everyday staples hide a truth that should shake every household in America. Heavy metals like lead, cadmium, and even arsenic are sealed inside, served up at dinner tables across the country, and still stamped approved by the USDA. Studies from 2024 and 2025 confirm it. Measurable toxins in foods we feed to children, to grandparents, to ourselves every single week. If other nations pull these products from shelves the moment contamination is found, why are ours still on sale, marketed as safe? How many slow, invisible doses will it take before the damage is undeniable? Before memory fades faster, bones weaken sooner, and cancers strike earlier than they should? Are we eating tradition, or are we eating away our future? This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. And today we're opening the lid on the 6 canned goods Elon Musk warns are laced with heavy metals and why the USDA still lets them onto your plate. Number 1. Star-kissed albacore white tuna in water. You don't have to be a seafood lover to recognize that bright blue star-kissed can. It's been a steady guest in American cupboards for what feels like forever. The healthy protein fix you could count on whether you were packing a lunch for the grandkids or just trying to throw together something quick after a long day. The label talks about wild-caught fish and being dolphin-safe, with cheerful fonts and ocean imagery that almost make you hear the waves. It's sold like a handshake in aluminum, a little promise that you're doing something good for your body. But the moment you pry that lid open and start looking past the marketing, the ocean breeze in that picture turns into something a whole lot less refreshing. Recent independent tests have shown that albacore tuna, especially from older, larger fish, can contain mercury levels that are downright unsettling. Mercury isn't just another chemical on a long ingredient list. It's a heavy metal and a neurotoxin, the kind that doesn't just pass through your system, but sets up camp, quietly building up in your brain, your heart, and your kidneys. The USDA still allows it, so long as it stays within limits. But that phrase is a little like saying the water in your basement is within limits. It's still there, and it's still a problem. The European Union doesn't play that game. They set much lower maximum levels and pull products off shelves when they go over. Here, those same cans keep rolling onto grocery shelves. No warnings in sight. The danger is not an abstract maybe. In 2024, a consumer review found that several U.S. tuna brands, Star-kissed among them, had samples that would be banned in Europe. The reason runs deep in the food chain. Albacore are big predators. They eat smaller fish that already contain mercury, which means every bite makes their own levels climb higher. By the time they end up in your tuna salad, the mercury is baked into the deal. And because canneries often buy in massive, long-term contracts from the same industrial fleets, one bad source can taint production for months, even years. It doesn't help that some flavored versions throw in other additives like MSG or aluminum from certain can linings. MSG is banned in baby food in the European Union due to neurological concerns, and aluminum has been linked to neurodegenerative issues when consumed excessively. Yet U.S. rules still wave these through without requiring clear front label disclosures. Shoppers think they're buying a simple can of tuna, but what they're getting might be a whole extra layer of risk they never signed up for. And if you look past the contents to the way it's made, the picture doesn't get prettier. Star-kissed parent company, Dongwon Industries in South Korea, has been called out for questionable labor practices and overfishing. In 2024, marine watchdogs reported that some albacore fleets supplying major U.S. brands were working in regions linked to human rights abuses, including debt bondage among migrant workers. For those who remember when American-made stood for something you could be proud of, realizing your tuna sandwich might carry the fingerprints of exploitation is a hard thing to swallow. Sure, there are safer routes. Smaller tuna species like skipjack tend to have far less mercury, and some companies, Wild Planet, Safe Catch, even publish mercury test results for every batch. Canned sockeye salmon from Alaska or good old sardines bring nutrition with minimal contamination risk. And if you're on a budget, frozen wild-caught pollock or tilapia can be seasoned into a tuna-like salad without the toxic baggage. But it's worth pausing to wonder why any of us have to become amateur detectives just to avoid poisoning ourselves at lunchtime. Why is it normal for a grandparent to squint at the fine print on a can instead of relying on the system to protect them? Maybe the people at Starissed aren't setting out to harm anyone. Maybe they're tangled in the same net of cost-cutting, global supply chains, and regulatory loopholes that grip so much of our food system. That's the part that's harder to fix. When the structure itself rewards cutting corners, even good intentions can get drowned. So where does that leave us? Not just as shoppers, but as a country, when the food we trust comes with risks we can't see until it's too late? Number 2, Del Monte fresh-cut green beans. Green beans are supposed to be the safe bet at the dinner table, the side dish that even picky kids will eat when you tell them it's good for you. Del Monte's fresh-cut green beans carry that exact image. Tidy rows of farm-fresh pods, sealed tight at their so-called peak of flavor, offering a little green on the plate without the scrubbing, snapping, or boiling. For anyone balancing grocery bills against the clock, it feels like a win. Vegetables in seconds, no guilt attached. But turn the can around, look past the nostalgic farmland picture, and the story changes from wholesome to unsettling. In 2024 and 2025, lab screenings flag something that doesn't belong in your vegetables at all: lead and cadmium. These heavy metals don't wash off. They aren't a seasoning you can skip. They creep in from contaminated soil where the beans are grown, or worse, from the very metal lining of the can itself. The European Union treats this like an emergency. Any batch over their razor-thin limits is yanked from shelves immediately. But here in the United States, the USDA allows levels far above what many health experts consider safe. And safe is a slippery word when it comes to lead, because there is no truly safe dose. Lead chips away at the nervous system, raises blood pressure, and grinds down kidney function over the years. Cadmium settles into your bones and organs, quietly weakening them while raising your risk of cancer. It's the kind of risk that doesn't announce itself until it's been sitting at your table for decades. Then there's the seasoning trap. Some flavored versions of Del Monte beans slip in monosodium glutamate, MSG, to enhance taste. The EU bans MSG in infant food over neurological concerns, yet here it passes right through without a warning on the front label. Regular consumption has been tied to headaches, blood pressure spikes, and potential acceleration of neurodegenerative conditions in vulnerable people. And we can't ignore the aluminum question. Aluminum additives and residues from can linings are banned as food additives in several European countries over suspected links to Alzheimer's disease. In the US, you'd never know they're there unless you dig through obscure manufacturing notes. The problem starts before the can is even made. Many large-scale vegetable farms work land that's been treated for decades with pesticides and fertilizers, leaving behind a legacy of heavy metal contamination. In 2025, food safety groups trace certain U.S. green bean supply chains, including those supplying big brands, to growing regions with documented lead-laced soil. Del Monte's own reports admit some crops are sourced from contract growers overseas, yet the can never tells you where your beans actually came from. That missing information isn't an accident. It keeps consumers from asking hard questions. It's easy to laugh off a single can, but think about the culture this normalizes. A country that teaches children to eat their vegetables while quietly allowing those vegetables to carry poisons that could shorten their lives. It's not just the older generation at risk. Here, it's the kids and grandkids who will carry these metals in their bodies, drop by drop, year after year. How do you explain to them that a vegetable, the symbol of health itself, was slowly eroding their future? If you want to keep green beans on your plate without the sight of toxins, there are ways forward. Some brands like Eden Foods test every batch for contaminants and use BPA-free, enamel-lined cans to reduce leaching. Glass jars from smaller farms avoid metal contact altogether. Frozen beans, especially those labeled with their country of origin, skip the canning chemicals while keeping nutrients intact. And if you can plan ahead, buying fresh in season and freezing them at home can give you clean beans all year. But here's the harder truth, the bigger question. Why are we, as a nation, so comfortable letting our food safety bar sit lower than others? Why should an American grandchild body be worth less protection than a European one? And if we keep letting this slide, how many more quiet dinners will chip away at our health before we finally say enough? Number 3, chicken of the sea sardines in oil. They sit there on the grocery shelf in their neat little tins, gleaming under the store lights like some modest treasure from the sea. The branding leans into nostalgia, the old-time coastal diet, rich in protein and omega-3s, a nod to a simpler age when food was wholesome, affordable, and came with a handshake of trust. Chicken of the sea sardines in oil wants you to believe you're buying a sailor's health food, a pantry staple that's both thrifty and nourishing, perfect for toast, crackers, or a quick meal you can feel good about. The label paints sparkling waters and silver fish, as if purity itself could be packaged. But crack open that lid, and what spills out isn't just oil. It's a story with far darker undertones. In 2024 and early 2025, independent lab tests detected measurable amounts of arsenic and cadmium in certain sardine products sold in the U.S., including some under major brand names. These aren't trace minerals your body needs. They're heavy metals it struggles to eliminate, quietly settling into bones, organs, and tissue. Sardines, being small and lower on the food chain, usually dodge the high mercury levels found in bigger fish like tuna. But they aren't immune to contamination, especially when caught in waters tainted by industrial runoff or naturally high in metals. The European Union enforces strict caps on arsenic and cadmium, rejecting imports that cross those lines. Here, the USDA's looser thresholds leave room for fish that would be turned away at European ports to stay in the American food supply. Over time, arsenic exposure can impair heart function, strain the liver, and weaken the immune system, while cadmium is a recognized carcinogen that also leaches calcium from bones. And the fish itself isn't the only worry. Many sardines from chicken of the sea are sealed in metal-lined cans that can leach aluminum into the food, especially after long storage. Aluminum additives, outright banned in several European countries for suspected links to Alzheimer's and other neurological damage, are still permitted here with no warning label to speak of. Even the oil can be part of the problem. Cheaper variants use refined soybean oil, often from genetically modified crops heavily treated with pesticides. That's a hidden chemical footprint most shoppers never see, layered invisibly on top of the fish itself. When you follow the supply chain, the picture clouds further. A 2025 investigation into global sardine fisheries found that some suppliers for big U.S. brands operate in overfished regions with little environmental oversight. Watchdog reports documented migrant workers enduring unsafe conditions, withheld pay, and grueling hours aboard certain fishing vessels. Chicken of the Sea may advertise responsible sourcing, but without batch-by-batch traceability available to the public, it's an unverified promise hanging in the air. For someone trying to eat both cheaply and healthily, that's a bitter twist. You think you're stocking up on a nutrient-dense superfood, but you might also be stocking up on slow-acting poisons. The danger builds quietly, year after year, more so for older adults whose bodies struggle to flush heavy metals, and for children whose growing systems absorb damage faster. And this isn't just about sardines. It's about a national food culture willing to normalize these risks, letting them pass as if the slow erosion of public health were just another cost of doing business. If you still want the benefits of oily fish without the baggage, there are cleaner choices. Some brands like Wild Planet or Mate's publish contaminant testing and use BPA-free enamel-lined cans or glass jars. Anchovies and herring from verified North Atlantic or Pacific sources tend to carry lower metal loads. Or you can skip the can altogether. Frozen wild-caught salmon can be baked, flaked, and used in the same dishes where sardines might go, keeping the flavor and nutrition while sidestepping the industrial residue. But the real question lingers like an aftertaste. Why should American shoppers be offered seafood that other nations won't even allow in their harbors? And how many more children and grandchildren will grow up carrying the invisible legacy of toxins we chose not to keep out of our food? Number 4. Hormel Spam Classic. It's hard to find a grocery aisle that doesn't have that familiar block of blue and yellow. Spam Classic, the old standby that's been filling American plates for generations. It's the stuff people tease about at barbecues, but also secretly keep in their pantry just in case. Fry it up with eggs, stack it in a sandwich, toss it in a casserole. No thawing, no seasoning, no fuss. It's practically a cultural relic wrapped in metal and nostalgia. But food that can last forever often has to be kept that way for a reason. And the secret to Spam's long shelf life isn't just salt, it's chemistry, and not the kind your body thanks you for. Right at the top of the ingredient list is sodium nitrite, the preservative that keeps the meat that telltale pink for months on end. It's banned in several countries and tightly restricted in the European Union because once it's inside your body, it can form nitrosamines, cancer-causing compounds linked to colorectal, stomach, and pancreatic cancers. The World Health Organization has gone so far as to put processed meats containing nitrites in the same risk category as asbestos and tobacco. This isn't alarmist spin, it's medical consensus. Nitrites also hammer the cardiovascular system, raising the risk of high blood pressure and heart disease, a particularly sharp danger for older adults. Yet here in the United States, Spam is still approved for sale without so much as a cancer warning on the label. And that's not the only hitchhiker in the can. Tests have found traces of aluminum from the metal lining, aluminum compounds that several EU member states have banned outright because of suspected ties to Alzheimer's disease and other forms of neurological decline. Add to that the sodium load, often more than 790 milligrams per serving, and you've got a triple hit. Nitrites that may fuel cancer, aluminum linked to brain disease, and salt levels that push blood pressure into dangerous territory. It's the kind of combination that can quietly chip away at health long before you notice the damage. The concerns don't stop with the additives. Much of the pork used in large-scale processed meat production in the U.S. is tied to farms that use ractopamine, a feed additive banned in over 160 countries, including the European Union, China, and Russia. It's prohibited abroad because of its documented impact on animal welfare and potential to cause cardiovascular stress in humans. American regulations still allow it, and unless a label clearly says ractopamine-free, there's no certainty it's not in the pork used for Spam. And there's a human toll beyond the dinner plate. Industrial pork processing plants, some connected to major Spam suppliers, have been exposed for their grueling working conditions. Injury rates higher than national averages, long hours, and dangerous equipment disproportionately borne by immigrant and low-income workers. That low sticker price in the grocery store hides a cost that isn't measured in dollars. If the ease and versatility of Spam is what draws you in, there are cleaner routes that won't leave you with a chemical hangover. Look for nitrate-free canned meats, cured with natural agents like celery powder or sea salt. Some brands like Dakota or smaller batch producers go this route. Canned chicken or turkey without chemical preservatives can stand in for Spam in most recipes. Or take a fresh pork roast, cook it, slice it, and freeze individual portions. You'll have ready-to-fry meat without the baggage of sodium nitrite, aluminum, or ractopamine. But the question that won't go away is this: why is a product containing chemicals banned across much of the developed world still a celebrated staple in American food culture? And how many breakfast plates, lunch boxes, and family dinners have already carried the slow toll of those choices, simply because generations trusted what the supermarket shelves put in front of them? Number 5. Campbell's condensed tomato soup. The red and white can isn't just soup. It's an American symbol, a piece of kitchen history that has been ladled into bowls for over 100 years. It's there for rainy afternoons with grilled cheese, for the sniffles, for those quick lunches when you just need something familiar and warm. People don't just buy Campbell's condensed tomato soup. They buy into the comfort it represents, trusting that iconic label like a neighbor who's always been there. But behind the soft steam rising from that bowl, the truth is less about comfort and more about the quiet creep of chemicals and contaminants you'd never invite into your kitchen. Lab tests in 2024 and 2025 told a story the label doesn't. Multiple batches of canned tomato products, Campbell's included, showed measurable levels of lead and cadmium. These are not harmless trace minerals. Lead, no matter how little, can impair brain function, slow cognitive development in children, and elevate blood pressure in adults. Cadmium, a known carcinogen, can weaken bones, damage kidneys, and raise cancer risks. The problem starts in the soil. Tomatoes are efficient at pulling up whatever's in the ground, and when grown on land tainted by industrial runoff or over decades of pesticide use, they bring that contamination straight to your plate. The European Union sets strict limits on these metals in tomato products, pulling any batch that breaches them. In the United States, the USDA's much looser standards mean a soup deemed unsafe overseas can still be ladled into an American child's bowl. And that's just the beginning. Some varieties of Campbell's condensed tomato soup carry high fructose corn syrup, HFCS, a cheap sweetener tied to metabolic syndrome, fatty liver disease, and type 2 diabetes. While several European countries have cut back on HFCS use in processed foods due to public health concerns, in the U.S. it remains as routine as salt and pepper. Speaking of salt, one prepared serving of this soup can hold over 900 milligrams of sodium, nearly 40% of the recommended daily limit for older adults or anyone managing heart health. Over time, high sodium intake fuels hypertension, strokes, and kidney problems, issues that already hit aging Americans the hardest. Then there's the can itself. Acidic tomato base sitting in metal-lined containers can draw out aluminum during storage. Aluminum additives are banned in multiple EU nations over suspected links to Alzheimer's and other neurological disorders, but here they remain legal with no front label warning. It's the kind of risk you can't see, taste, or smell, but it builds in the background with every comforting spoonful. Even the sourcing story casts a shadow. Large-scale tomato farming often leans on migrant labor, working in extreme heat, with documented cases of wage theft, inadequate safety gear, and medical neglect. In 2025, advocacy groups reported ongoing abuses in tomato fields linked to major U.S. brands, including those supplying canned soups. For a product that markets itself as nurturing and wholesome, it's a jarring contradiction. For those who still want tomato soup without the hidden baggage, there are cleaner, safer paths. Organic brands like Pacific Foods and Amy's Kitchen Skip HFCS keep sodium in check, use BPA-free packaging, and buy from farms with transparent labor practices. Making your own is even easier than most think. A can of organic tomatoes from a brand that publishes heavy metal testing, a sautéed onion, some garlic, and a splash of cream can become soup in under 20 minutes. Freeze extra portions, and you can have instant comfort without the slow drip of unwanted toxins. But the bigger question lingers. How did we get to a point where one of America's most trusted comfort foods can carry heavy metals, excessive sugar, and packaging contaminants, and still be considered acceptable? When other nations have drawn a clear line, why is it that here the line keeps moving, always just far enough to keep the shelves full? And how many more bowls will be served before we admit that tradition should never be an excuse for turning a blind eye to what's in the spoon? Number 6. Progresso Traditional Chicken Noodle Soup. There's a reason a can of chicken noodle soup feels like a safety net in American kitchens. It's the meal you reach for when the weather turns bitter, when you're worn down, or when someone at home needs a little extra care. Progresso's traditional chicken noodle soup leans hard into that sentiment, selling itself as the heartwarming alternative to instant noodles. The same comfort you'd expect from a pot slowly simmered by a grandmother, just without the hours of chopping and stirring. But pull back that easy feel-good image, and what you find floating in the broth is a recipe for concern. In 2024 and 2025, independent lab tests on canned chicken soups, including Progresso's, turned up traces of lead in the vegetables and noodles. This isn't dirt you can wash away. It's the legacy of industrial farming on soil saturated for decades with pesticides and fertilizers that leave behind heavy metals. USDA standards might allow it, but these same batches would likely fail the European Union's far stricter limits, where even low readings can trigger immediate recalls. Lead doesn't just pass through the body, it lodges in bones, disrupts the nervous system, worsens cardiovascular disease, and in older adults can quietly chip away at health over years. The ingredient list tells another part of the story. Some varieties of Progresso's chicken noodle soup contain monosodium glutamate, MSG, slipped in to deepen the savory taste of the broth. The European Union bans MSG in infant food over neurological safety concerns, but here in the US, it's allowed in canned soups without a hint of warning on the front label. For sensitive individuals, long-term consumption can lead to headaches, spikes in blood pressure, and inflammatory reactions that don't make it onto any nutrition facts panel. And then there's the sodium. A single cup serving can top 800 milligrams. But since most people finish the whole can, the real load can approach 1,800 milligrams. For anyone with high blood pressure, kidney disease, or heart problems, that's almost the daily limit swallowed in one sitting. Even the chicken itself isn't as straightforward as the marketing implies. While Progresso proudly claims no artificial flavors and no added hormones, the truth is that U.S. law already prohibits hormones in poultry. It's the things not mentioned that matter more. Industrial poultry operations often rely on feed additives and antibiotics that are banned in other countries, producing meat that passes domestic inspection but may carry residues and lacks the clean nutritional profile many assume they're getting when they see the word wholesome on a label. And the packaging? It's not as harmless as it looks. Acidic broth stored in metal-lined cans for months can leach aluminum into the food. In several European countries, aluminum additives are banned over links to neurodegenerative diseases. But here, the risk from prolonged contact remains an unspoken cost of convenience. If you want chicken noodle soup without the toxic fine print, there are better choices. Organic brands like Kettle and Fire or Pacific Foods offer BPA-free packaging, slow-simmered broth, and no MSG or excessive sodium. Or you can make your own in just over an hour. Simmer bone-in chicken with carrots, celery, onions, and herbs. Add noodles at the end, and freeze leftovers for an easy, reheatable bowl of comfort that doesn't come with lead or questionable additives. But the real bite comes with the bigger question. When even America's most iconic sick day soup, a symbol of care and recovery, can legally carry heavy metals, MSG, and a sodium hit that would make a cardiologist wince, what does that say about the food system's priorities? And if this is what's in the bowl we trust most, what's really hiding in the rest of the pantry? Before the next meal, ask yourself, do you really know what's on your plate? Subscribe now and question everything.
Thanks a lot for sticking with us to the very end. If you found this video useful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss any daily uploads. And now, go ahead and explore some of our top recommended videos popping up on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next one.